Welcome to The Courage Effect. I'm Suzanne Weller, and this is a show about growth and unleashing what's possible. You will hear inspiring stories about what courage looks like, how we navigate what's getting in our way, and the opportunities that surface when we choose courage over comfort. Let's get started. Welcome to The Courage Effect. I am Suzanne Weller. Today, you're joining me for another conversation about what happens when we embrace courage over comfort. And my guest is Michele Y. Smith, who is the CEO of the Museum of Pop Culture, also known as MoPOP, here in Seattle. We talk about her journey, how she is in fact a product of philanthropy, and how important it is for her to democratize access to pop culture, the steps that she's taken in her life to get her to where she is now, and how important it is for us to embrace community and know that it's something that we all need to be accountable for. Michele is inspiring on so many levels, and I know that you will love this conversation. Thank you for listening. I am super excited for our guest today because Michele is somebody that I met last fall in Seattle. We were on a panel together. And Michele Smith, she is the CEO of the Museum of Pop Culture here in Seattle, also known as MoPOP. But as soon as she walked in the room, Michele had she was effervescent. She just was bold. She was exactly who she was. And she brought so much beauty and energy to our larger conversation and to the room. So I knew pretty much instantaneously that I had to get her on the Courage Effect because she pretty much just embodied it from the second that she walked in the door. So Michele, here you are. Welcome to the Courage Effect.
So much, Suzanne, and it was so fun to be on that panel. I still have great fond memories of it, and it's, brought along our friendship. So thank you for having me here today.
Indeed. And the panel was about women in leadership. And it was such a wonderful experience to bring women together to talk about from all various types of organizations, sizes, and otherwise. But let me give you a little bit of background about Michele before we dive into our conversation today. Michele Y. Smith is the CEO of MoPOP, known for her mission-focused leadership in the nonprofit sector, emphasizing business development, operations, and finance. Her approach prioritizes diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and mentoring, advocating for philanthropy's democratization of pop culture. I love the whole idea of democratization of pop culture. Give us a little bit of what that means to you, because I follow you on the socials. You're steeped in pop culture. That's something that I have been so passionate about through my larger life. I'd love to know what sort of drew you to that and how you're bringing the democratization of your work to pop culture overall.
Yes, well, I am born and raised in Philadelphia. And so living in Philadelphia, I had the opportunity to be able to engage in the arts. I play the piano. I've dabbled in the Suzuki violin. I was in the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra. And as you know, Philadelphia is a quick 2-hour ride to New York to Broadway. So pop culture has been in my DNA. Born in the 70s when hip hop was just starting to become alive, in the 80s when MTV Total Request Live was there, and then the 90s when we got into the grunge era. So I feel like it qualifies me to be able to be in pop culture, keeping up with the culture. And when we talk about democratizing pop culture, is that, arts and culture are being taken out of schools right now, depending what state that you're in. And the Museum of Pop Culture is 25 years old, coming up in this month in a couple of weeks on the 21st. And we have one of the largest music collections. It started out as the Experience Music Project, but we've gone into fashion, film, gaming, and music. And we were one of the first museums to really recognize hip hop as a genre. Fast forward in 2023, we have one of the largest hip hop collections in the world that, HBO, Netflix, all the museums kind of borrow from there. And so one of the things is in our strategic and operational plan is pop culture is a global language, but it is scholarly. For example, we have the 1969 Jimi Hendrix Stratocaster guitar. And where was he playing that? He was playing that at Woodstock during civil rights. And think about how kids learn a little bit differently. Being able to tell that historic story with a guitar really lends to the democratizing of pop culture because it is scholarly. And a lot of people said that it's not, but it's those memorable moments in time that you're able to share with an exhibit, something that happened that is a history lesson.
I love that you're coming at it from that angle. And I mean, I love MoPOP and I've been going since early days. I've been a member since it was EMP. So since, I mean, like Paul Allen was the one that was really starting it with like, some of his collection. But I take a lot of people there from out of town because it's so unexpected. There's nothing else like it.
There isn't, and there's something for everyone. And I think that's what's so special about it. It's that it is multi-generational. So if you go with your family, you could be talking about a TV show that was popular during your time and comparing it with the person that you're with what's coming out, and really talking about a memorable moment. You could be talking about a learned experience that maybe then makes you go over to my retail store and get a book and go for a deeper dive. It really opens up the curiosity for learning and experiencing, and really having everyone, experience the museum in their own way.
You have had a really interesting career because you were in hospitality, travel, and entertainment for a number of years, and then you were at the Woodland Park Zoo, which is also near and dear to my heart. I live very close to it, and you have been in these spaces during the pandemic, and I know there were a lot of challenges with that. But I'd love to hear a little bit about younger Michele from Philadelphia. How did you start getting involved in the path that you decided to go down?
I started at a school called Milton Hershey in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It was built by Catherine and Milton Hershey. And if you've ever eaten a Hershey bar, you've supported my philanthropy, my youth. I went on scholarship, and so the endowment really funds the school. And so anyone that has actually supported or eaten anything of the Hershey product supported my education. So I think, fast forward to where we are right now, where I'm working at a nonprofit talking about a mission and philanthropy. I am a product of philanthropy. It's near and dear to my heart. I was one of those marginalized kids. I had, a one parent role in my household. And so that's where I've gotten to today. But my leadership journey really started at Milton Hershey School, where I was there. I was on the Leadership Society, and I was afforded an opportunity. And I think that really kind of lends into the courage, because my mom had the courage to send her kids away to that school. It's a hard thing, you get to come home on the weekends. But I also myself, her and I had the conversation, and my brother went to the school, to have the courage to do something different, out of the norm of, not staying home and doing the normal school, but going away to a school and taking that opportunity forward.
Talk a little bit more about your mom. This sounds like she's had a lot of impact on you.
She's been, the unconditional love that you don't think about now that she's gone. May she rest in peace.
Mm.
And as I get older and to larger positions, she was the one that always showed me the courage to do what I wanted to do, and really kind of put that out there. She herself, started out as one of the first Black ballerinas in Philadelphia. Then she went into grants, and then she went into accounting and all those different things. And then, in her later part of life was a behavioral specialist, and, went into brain surgery. So, looking at her, you can see how my career has gone, where she's really went into different modalities that gave me the courage to see that it was okay to do something different that was more passionate, or what she wanted to do. And she didn't stay in one place. So that's where I get a lot of my courage from, and the support of my mom, and brought me to here where I'm at today.
It's beautiful. It sounds like she was an amazing woman. It must have been interesting to be a young Black girl going to Hershey, Pennsylvania for school. I'm imagining that took a good dose of courage as well.
It was, but you know what? What I found at the school, it was so diverse in itself. So there were people like me there. I think it was just the courage to, be away from home and not see your parents every day. I think that's where it took a little bit of getting used to. But they did a really great job of onboarding, and making me feel that belonging there, that I started to not go home on the weekends, and I started to dive into, the academics and to the arts and culture, and all the different things that the school provided me, to make me feel good about my decision, that developed more courage, and it kind of disappeared to, it was the norm.
It is sort of like building up that muscle as it would be, but I think just
Right.
getting, as you said, just sort of diving in and making your life. That to me is sounding like it was really an opportunity for you to start shaping your life for you.
It was. My mom, told me, she's like, this is an opportunity for you. Take it. Let's see how you feel, because there were so many feelings about leaving home, even from, outside allies of her friends, her family, her mom, her dad. Like, what are you doing sending your kid away to school? But she told me to view it as an opportunity. Look at what it may bring for you. And it did. It really did. So I think I've always had that in the back of my mind, that, she's ingrained in my head in every step of the way in my personal and professional career.
Mm, beautiful. You also spent quite a bit of your career in travel, and it seems like that was really where you started. Talk to me about what took you to that and what that taught you.
My friends were flight attendants, and they were always, I was working the 9 to 5 in Philadelphia, and they were flying all over the place. And I started at the time to, use their, write your own ticket and, have the buddy pass. And I started traveling with them, and I was like, this is kind of fun. You're traveling the world and, all those different things. And I took the opportunity to apply for a role at United Airlines in Philadelphia, and another opportunity came up. And it's kind of funny that we're talking about this, but I remember I was on track to, lead the Philadelphia domicile of flight attendants and different things. But halfway through my training, the company came to me and they said, "Hey, we really need you in San Francisco. And here's why. This is what it will do for your career." San Francisco is one of our largest hubs, and it travels internationally. So you would be able to go international. And that really, and they're like, "We'll pack you up. We'll, relocate you. We'll get a realtor or an apartment person out there." And I remember sitting with my mom, was like, this was not what I signed up for when I, actually interviewed for the role. And she said, it's an opportunity. You can always come back to Philadelphia within a year, which they had also said, like, just go for a year, get the experience, and if you want to transfer back to Philadelphia, you can. Suzanne, I never left. I stayed, and I've been out on the West Coast ever since. Went from San Francisco to San Diego to, LA to now I'm in the Pacific Northwest. So I never really went back to the East Coast, which I love and adore, but that kind of, pushed me off into my career in travel.
I love that. It's almost like the offer you couldn't refuse.
Right. It's the offer that you really couldn't refuse.
Did you travel a lot for that job at the time, or was it more based in San Francisco?
No, I did travel a lot. Unfortunately, I was there during 9/11, and
Mm,
those two SFOFW flights were my flight attendants,
mm,
unfortunately. So I learned a lot of crisis management at the time. I was responsible, SFOSW was a 4,000 flight attendant hub. And most of the flight attendants did not live in San Francisco. They really flew in and they were commuting. And so my role at the time, if you believe this, which I'm dating myself, was to travel on the flight with the flight attendant and do their reviews, but also look at the market track of the flights in first class and the food. And for example, flying to England, we were looking at the clotted tea and service, or we were looking at the fruit and the noodle service when we're going to Japan, and all those different things that would happen on these long haul flights. And so that got me into travel, and I was, I could get 16 flight attendants on the way going and 17 going back, because you're staffing these 777s. But I was doing their reviews, learning about, the 1K milers, talking to, the passengers, looking at all of the internal things that happen from when you board the flight to you land, in terms of the customer experience. And then 9/11 happened, and those were two of my planes, and that really kind of changed my life. I learned a lot about, managing during a time of grief and different things like that. And then it parlayed me to taking a furlough, and got me into working for Expedia.com, because I was bored of being paid for 2 years with flight benefits. And I happened to go into a job fair and learn about Travelscape, which was then became Expedia.com. So again, the windy path, it just happened, and that's how I got into travel.
Mm. And it was okay. So I was going to ask you what then took you to the next step. So how long were you at Expedia?
I was at Expedia for like 2.5 years, and this is when it was called Travelscape, and no one knew that it was Expedia.com. I was one of the ones that were banging on hotel doors and saying, give me your inventory, or, working with cruise lines and saying, give me your inventory to book cruises online. And went through that. It was actually a startup. So I was, the cruise manager, the retail manager. We did everything. And so kind of got my startup chops from there. And from there, I went to Living Social Groupon, because a lot of my friends went from Expedia to that company, which was a different way of doing travel. So you can see the kind of windy road of where I went. It was more on the business development side. And that kind of took off my career in several different ways.
So I'm hearing an openness for opportunity and for like seeing where it might take you.
Yes. I'm always looking for that opportunity, and where it might take you. I look at it from a different lens, where some people may see loss. I see opportunity, and I see another way to add a skill to my resume.
Mm, I love that. You're also making me think about 9/11, in that, something very tragic that happens. And that was something that, I mean, people were terrified to fly after that. I mean, I remember being on a flight the week afterwards, and that was the year that I moved to New York. It was an interesting time for me too. But there was maybe 20 people on the plane,
Yeah.
and the flight attendants were like thanking us for even being on the plane. I wonder for you, I mean, obviously you lost colleagues, but what was it like to be in air travel at that point?
It was surreal because at the time, while you saw very great, brave flight attendants, everyone was afraid to fly.
Hmm.
And so it took a lot of courage for us to give that support of, making people feel comfortable. While the flight attendants were thanking you, they were incredibly nervous, because we're like, could this happen again?
Yeah.
This is not out of the norm. And so it took a lot of courage to get on those flights. I believe, because I was management, that I really needed to step up and model the behavior that I was looking for from my employees. Like, if they saw me doing it, they felt that it was comfortable. Let's do it all together. And I think that's how we got back to where we needed to be. But it took a lot of, sitting down and talking, because it really were fears that, we really needed to make people feel comfortable. And some people, chose to opt out. Some people, took their time coming back. And as you saw, as a consumer, it took a lot of people time to come back. United then went into Chapter 11 and kind of reorganized themselves and different things. So there was a lot going on of loss of my colleagues that were flight attendants that flew on those planes, loss of just the sense of stability, and then loss of going through grieving through furloughs and going through those processes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I'm also resonating back to, so then you were at the Woodland Park Zoo, which we talked about, and you were there during the pandemic, and you were this business and CFO, right? When you were there.
I was the chief business and financial officer, and that was my crisis management kicked in over there, and it was a totally different thing. But I went from the 9/11 crisis to the pandemic crisis. It almost same fears, but different, aspects, right?
Yeah. What do you think are the superpowers that you need to go through that? Courage is obviously one of them, undoubtedly, but I'm curious what else is in that larger crisis and maybe courage toolkit.
I think, for me, how I survived through the pandemic was just the resilience. we had animals. So besides everybody else closing down their business, I was not afforded the opportunity to say, hey, I could just walk away and close the gate and everything will be fine. We had 1,000 exotic animals that we needed to take care of, and some of which that could get COVID themselves.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, how do I see the light at the end of the tunnel? And that's kind of how I get through a lot of things. I'm like, what is the light at the end of the tunnel going to be? And I kind of brace myself like, what does that look like? And I keep rewarding myself for small steps. Like the one was, let me financially model to see what it will take for us to be open. Okay, let's get us open. So I was taking things one step at a time to get us back to some sense of normalcy, even though it was very chaotic. But I also did a lot of self-care because I knew that I needed enough sleep, enough nutrition, enough mental clarity to be able to be back in the trenches every day, because it was that continuous process. We were closed for 5 months. So, looking at your spreadsheet of money going out the door, I mean, I had financially modeled that if we didn't open by September, we wouldn't have a zoo. And for me, I took it very personally. Number one, I didn't want to be part of that narrative of that.
Yeah.
I closed the zoo and it never opened again. At the time it was a 125-year-old zoo, and I was like, I don't want that to be my legacy. And also because I cared about the animals and the community around me, and I just felt like it was my job, my duty to step up and get this done, and that my light at the end of the tunnel was opening us, and us, bringing things back to normal. And I knew once I got through that there would be a ton of resume items that I could put on to, further my career to be a CEO.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I hadn't even thought about just like, we have to keep the animals alive. I mean, and that sounds, even me saying that, I feel incredibly selfish. But it's the idea of like all of these businesses, because people are like, this is my livelihood. This is the livelihood of the people that work for me. But you're literally talking about the lives of many precious and rare animals.
Exactly. It's like you just can't close the gate. And we had, exotic animals from all over the world that needed their care.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't know is that the virus could jump from you to the animals. So we really had to take a lot of proactive measures to keep our employees safe, our animals safe, all those different things that, you can close up your office and leave your computer, but you can't just close up the zoo and just say bye. So, a lot of different things that we work through, but, there's an incredible staff at the zoo right now that does such a great job. And, we had incredible board and leadership helping us along the way. It was an all-in task. It wasn't just me. It was the employees, our CEO, our executive team, the board, and the community all coming together to make sure that this institution, stayed open and, continued its legacy.
Yeah. I also am reflecting on how the zoo and what I think you're also doing at the Museum of Pop Culture right now, there's a key thread of revitalization, of really bringing it into the next generation. I mean, with the zoo, like Zoo Tunes, which I go to all the time, the concerts and all the various events and otherwise, but I know that it's also not just supporting the zoo, but some of the other local restaurants or performers that are around. So I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe how you revitalized both at the zoo, and then maybe we can transition into what you're doing at MoPOP.
Sure. I think, even in this time, community is more important than ever. How we revitalize things is that, Zoo Tunes was, acts like Ziggy Marley, and people were not coming out. So we focused on our local community and we revitalized Zoo Tunes with KEXP as a partner. And, at the time, artist venues weren't open. But because we had the outdoor, we were able to put on Zoo Tunes. And so we work with local artists. I said, I have this money to pay Ziggy Marley. Why don't I play the artists who are not getting any money and, are living to get some money to be able to livelihood? That's all they did. So we thought about, let's work with our community and let's work with our community restaurants. So we started to put together programs like Whiskey and Wild Bites, where we had 52 vendors of food and beverage and all of your favorite restaurants come out to the zoo so that you could taste them. And we really worked with, Governor Inslee at the time to be an approved space to do all these things. One of the things we did was something called the Call of the Wild, where we have these ambassador animals that we would take out to, schools that weren't, being utilized. So we would, if you remember, everyone was so tired of being on Zoom or Teams that you could actually work with our ambassador animals. One was like maybe a flamingo or a fox or whatever. And you, Suzanne, could actually say that you could, for $250 for 15 minutes, we would call the zoo on FaceTime and we would come into your meetings and talk about that animal and conservation for the first 15 minutes, because let's be honest, people were just tired and grumpy and all those different things. And being able to move that and really talk about conservation and why it's important during that time was just a digital play that we had never thought about. We were literally holding a phone on Facebook Live with the animal talking about it, and you're paying $250. So we reinvented ourselves that way. And the same thing, with having the restaurants come out and put that out on the meadow that could fit 5,000 people for zoo tunes and different things like that. So we really reinvented ourselves and did some incredible things that made it worth for the community to come back out and say, we're scared, but we actually are a safe space. We're outside. This works. And so that's what we were able to do at the zoo. Fast forward now, coming into museums, it was a little bit harder. When I joined, MoPOP in 2023 in March, museums got it a little bit harder. They didn't have outside. Remember, HVACs, we didn't know if you had the right HVACs or whatever. So they weren't really able to open up zoos and aquariums that didn't have the outside space. They weren't really able to open up. And so for me, coming into the organization, museums took a little bit of a harder hit. And what I did is say, we are at the time 23 years old, going into 24 years old. What do we need to reset, refocus, and revitalize who we are? And I did. We started with a strategic and operational plan that focused on our pillars: fashion, film, gaming, and music. I focused on our educational programs, which are tried and true for 25 years, and really started to highlight that. I worked with Congresswoman Jayapal to talk about what it would look like for us to be a national museum, and we're on our way to doing that now with not only Congresswoman Jayapal, but Congressman Newhouse. And so we've really reset our membership program because it had dwindled down, and we went and surveyed. And so now we launched an apartment program. So all the apartments around the museum were in. We started with my apartment, piloting it and saying, like, what does it look like to, give you guys, 10% off membership, 20% off, admission, and what do you like to see? And what will make you come to the museum? Because the museum in itself is an art form. It's a Frank Gehry building, but it also has 13 different galleries. It has a restaurant. It has a retail. So what would it be like to be the community hub for downtown as we're restarting and revitalizing, and really bring the locals back into the community? They want to see themselves within the community. So our food and beverage program really works with 35 different other vendors outside of the museum. So Shug's Ice Cream, you can sometimes get that there. Any of your mom and pop, items, salt, coffee, food. We're working with the local farmers. We're showcasing that to our 500,000 visitors that we see. And so that's what it really means to kind of restart the museum versus the zoo and do all those different things.
Well, and I just want to acknowledge the amount of creativity that goes into this. And I know that you bring a lot of that and you have an amazing team that does it with you. So I'm curious for you, talk a little bit about your team and what do you think sort of brings your leadership superpowers? What are the things that really are unique for you that you're able to bring these people together to really build that community in these organizations?
For me, I consider my entire organization positive disruptors. And it starts with me with the mindset. I don't look at a problem as, Michelle did something wrong or Suzanne did something wrong. I identify it as a mindset of, we have an issue. What is the opportunity? How are we going to move forward? And that failure is encouraged because it helps us understand what our blind spots are and it helps us refine. And that's my leadership style. It's a different way of thinking. It's a mindset. It's not about that it went wrong. It's about how do we understand what was the issue that went wrong and how do we fix that? And that's the mindset of my leadership. I have a people-centered leader. And one of the things that I talk about is that I can hold my team accountable, but I also can have empathy for them at the same time. They can be interchanged, so I can understand that you're tired, Suzanne, for the day. But I also want to make sure you understand what the goal is. And so I want you to go home and take your vacation or take your sick day and feel fine that you have that psychological space to say, it's just not hitting with me today, Michelle, and that I need to go get myself a walk and take some time off. And I'm going to come back ready to be present and do the work that I'm very passionate about. It's a different way of thinking.
Well, and I love the idea of positive disruptors, right? Because it's just a matter of how do we do something, shake it up, not just to shake it up, but do it in a way where we can learn from it.
We can learn from it, that we can expand our mission, and that we can grow our revenue, right? Those are all the three things that we want to do. But if you don't have the revenue, you can't expand the mission. So how do we amplify our voices? And how do we do that, to continue to make ourselves relevant? Pop culture is an essential part of our life. It defines us and we in turn define it. But it's the creative disruptors that advance culture and the norm. And so I put into the mindset of our team that we're positive disruptors. How can we do this differently, smarter, quicker, more efficient, all those different things. And that's how we kind of work with how we move through what we're doing. We're always resetting, refocusing, and being agile. In this global environment, especially, we have to. It's a new way of working.
Well, and especially now, as you were saying, as we kicked off the conversation, because of funding and all of these things being pulled, as far as the arts are being threatened, as are all nonprofits right now. So can you talk a little bit about how you've already been steering the ship a little bit differently than you were when you joined a few years ago. What's been evolving for you over the past 6 months and the museum?
I think what's been evolving for me is that, again, we need to rely on our local community. Right? We have a certain time that we're coming into from June to September that we welcome a lot of our international visitors. But on our shoulder seasons and throughout the year, for me, it's really important to engage the local community, not just in downtown, but from, across the way, in Bellevue, in South Seattle, in Everett, and all over. So we've created a Washington discount that we're working with so that we're engaging more with our local community, listening to them and hearing about more program that they want to see. So that's one of the things that we've been working on to continue to foster that. But community is really important. We're supporting, the small business owners, but also everyone around us and the schools. Everyone's taken a hit, but now more than ever, it's bringing the community in to help us, accomplish our goals and also help them accomplish their goals, for their personal selves.
I so love the community thread. I mean, everything that you've talked about today is really steeped in that, but especially with the museum, because it does take all of us to show up and to do it. And I think we all just take for granted like we were talking about with the zoo before. I think that we just think, oh, these things are always going to be there, these institutions in our community. And we really have to, we have some accountability to make those not just a part of our lives, but to allow them to thrive, to continue not just for us, but for future generations.
I mean, just stopping in and having a bite to eat goes towards my operating budget. Donating a dollar, and as you move up in your financial life, donating more, and being a part of it, and and letting us know what programs stick with you or what you want to see. We're always willing to try, and that's why we build things with the community so that they will come and see themselves or what they'd like within the museum.
It's also it's fun. I mean, like you're bringing fun to everything that you're doing with the museum. I mean, obviously the 25th anniversary of the museum happening right now, but I love that you have like the collabs, like you did the Glassy Baby collab, right? I mean, there's certain just in that. I love that there was a video that I saw on social of you rapping, I think, at one of your team meetings or one of your all hands. Talk about that.
It's actually it was Peer 150 HR group. And I was like, I want to do something different. I'm pop culture and I love rap. So I made up a rap about the job that I did. It just was, had a little bit of help, but, worked it out and decided to do something different to end the talk. They were there all day long. I was the keynote speaker and, being last, they're like, what are you going to do? You're going to do another PowerPoint. So I wanted to end on something special and memorable, that people would remember. And so I decided to rap and do that.
Oh, so good. And I'm going to make sure that I include a link to that somewhere in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because it was so good. But I'm really struck by how you and the team are really integrating the museum into people's lives. It's not just about people coming, but like making it just a part of their community and almost a part of the identity of who we are as Seattleites and beyond.
Well, it's the fandoms. We have football fandoms, soccer fandoms. There's so many things that you can play off. I mean, and we're always willing to try. For us, the Glassy Baby is something very, very special because number one, it's twofolded. When we talk about democratizing philanthropy, the Glassy Baby actually donates to other causes and charities. So it's almost like a trifecta. You buy a Glassy Baby from us, we put that corporate giving in over there, they get a percentage of it, you're presenting, we get a percentage of the money for us here at the museum. Why wouldn't we do that? I mean, it's a tried and true, and for us, there's only 350 of those being made. And basically, if you look at the color of it, it is the outside, that purplish color of the building. It's iconic. It's a nod to the past, but also a celebration to the future. And to be able to create that with a community partner, to me, I think is unique and special. And I think that's what I'm talking about. Community helping community. And to be able to team up with Glassy Baby to do that, I thought that was such a great thing of a homage and honor to who we are, in this third iconic decade.
The one other thing that I wanted to ask you about is you talk about really being the product of philanthropy in your life. You do a lot of board work. I know that you've been on numerous boards. For people that want to maybe step into giving or just increasing their community in some way, volunteering, bringing their energy into the support of others, sometimes courage comes into that, sometimes just knowing where to go. What recommendations or what thoughts would you give them so maybe they can take the step into getting more involved in philanthropy?
Sure. There's, most nonprofits have volunteers. And so, depending on what your passion is, you could, sign up and learn about a volunteer session, and what that would look like to be, whether it's at MoPOP or at the zoo or at the Museum of Flight or any other museum or any other cultural institution. By buying a membership, you are becoming a part of our fandom, a loyal fan that we keep track of and that we work with, and that, $79 is the start of a membership, but it's also a start of your loyalty with the Museum for Philanthropy, where you might start to see us say, for $25, this will help us give outreach kits. And just your $25 will help us, it adds up. If one person gave me $1, like I said, only $1, what would that add up to, right? If everybody that came through the museum gave me $1 or $2, it adds up. So that starts on your philanthropy career. I think that most people think that you have to donate $1 million or $10,000. But by coming in my museum and purchasing a membership or a ticket or eating or coming to a special exhibit is contributing to philanthropy. You don't have to be the Gates or the Bezos of the world to really foster that philanthropy relationship. You build it on. It's multi-generational. And what you'll find is when you start low and you build, and as you're getting your raises or you're feeling, very touched by something, you add more and you become along of that journey and you become part of that mission and you're showing the work. Because when we then give you that information, you're seeing how we're having an impact. We report on everything that we do. So you're looking at like my $25 went to the outreach program and look how many more schools they served, So I think we're building that, community-based fundraising, knowing that you don't have to start always at the 5,000 or the 10,000 mark. Start at $5 and you're a part of something. You're a part of a new community.
Thank you. All really good reminders that even small acts, even just going and having lunch, that can make a difference.
It can. It really can.
Yeah. Well, you started off, you were talking about being the light at the end of the tunnel, or what might the light at the end of the tunnel be. You are that to a certain extent, Michele. I mean, you are that positive disruptor. And I love that you are bringing other people to join that collective with you and to really be part of that community of disruption and philanthropy. Because, I mean, as you said, we always need it, but we really, really need it now. Any final thoughts before we bid adieu?
No, I just really want to thank you for taking the time to highlight me. As we know in this day, representation matters. So you just reaching out and wanting to highlight me has warmed my heart. I'm extremely grateful. For any listener, please come into the museum. I'd love to see you. My team would love to see you, and we'd love to just be able to be embracing you a part of our MoPOP family.
Awesome. Michele, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all of the work that you do, your team and otherwise, and for being an inspiration. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Stay courageous. The Courage Effect is brought to you by Weller Collaboration. If you're looking for a leadership coach, maybe a speaker or a consultant to help you or your team be more courageous and adaptable, we would love to have a conversation. More information is available via the links in our show notes. Please spread the word about the Courage Effect. You taking a few minutes to rate or review your favorite episodes or share them with people in your universe makes a big difference. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more information about the show, me, our amazing guests, or you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, please contact us via our website at thecourageeffect.com. It takes a village to bring this show to you. I want to thank Alex Sandyforth for her production and administrative superpowers, Dave Nelson for composing our theme music, and I am your host, Suzanne Weller. Thank you again for listening.